what's in that?
Cool. It's been fun, like using the video editor, editor, because I can add. I'm gonna start like adding different things to like during the show, so it'll be fun for us. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Cool.
got it.
All right. I'm
All right. In 3, 2, 1. Hello, Perceptionists.
Welcome to Perceptionists Anonymous.
I'm Emily.
I'm Christy Gann.
And we are going to talk about some stuff today.
Guys, ready? So, you guys, we want to talk about the witch trials all around the world. This is going to be, I know that obviously we have the Salem witch trials here in the United States, and then there's like a few other lesser known ones in the United States as well, but then all across Europe, like, I can't help but feel like we are so lucky to be alive during this point in history that we are, you guys. Those people really set, even if they weren't witches or they weren't anything like we practice today, like, they set the foundation for us to be able to fucking do whatever we want and survive.
Yeah, no, we want to talk about the witch trials. So we've done a couple episodes about like Wicca and witchcraft fairly recently, so we thought it was kind of cool to come in now and address the witch trials in and of themselves and what exactly they were, because so often, especially in America, and I'm not speaking for the rest of the world, I'm not even speaking for all Americans, but often in America, when people say witch trials, you go, oh, the Salem witch trials. That was such a small occurrence. Like
and it was
like
right.
And like, and the media has romanticized it. There's been books about it. Like, it's just so ridiculously like over kind of proportioned and blown out of like largely, when the European witch trials and witch trials that happened like all across the world basically took years and years and years and
300 years,
thousands of people. They killed like 50,000 people on suspicion of witchcraft during the height of the witch trials.
Dude, I heard 80,000.
It's insane. It is there's so many, and it's on an interesting context level for me. I was like, oh, that kind of explains why I very often will tune into someone's past lives and it'll be like, oh, you have a witch trial, like there was a time you were persecuted for being a witch, because there is such a prolific time in history when so many people were persecuted for being a witch, and it was just what happened if you had a different set of belief systems outside of the Catholic Church or whatever else was going on during the time. If you were different, or even if you were just an old spindler, of a woman, and like you never married, then you were just pushed out of society. And whether you were practicing magic or not, which a lot of them were, like there was a lot of energetic and like pagan practice.
They were the healers.
Yeah.
I mean, not all of them, of course, and not all women, by the way, as well, you guys. 80% were determined to have been women, but not all of them.
And some were animals too, because they
dogs.
Right, like
they thought dogs were the devil. They literally thought, like, you guys, this is so crazy. Like, I hope I don't get too excited and just start running my mouth on this information.
Like, oh my gosh, there's so much. But and they would kill the witches' pets with them. They'd be like, oh, you're a witch, so you have a cat. We're gonna kill your cat too. It's like, what?
Come here, little mama. Let's make a point. By the way, black cats are called Bombay cats. Just a little tidbit.
Why?
Ready? I don't know. My little Bombay Sapphire. Come here, babies. Like gin and tonic. Oh my god. Anyway, I just thought that was kind of clever.
Oh, that's funny. That's very funny. It's just, that's super funny. So, do you want to do your joke before we forget?
Yeah. We got a couple of them. If you want to go first.
Oh, I don't really have a good one.
Oh, okay. All right. Now I've got a mediocre one.
Mine they were just too weird, and I don't like it. So.
Yeah, some of them are like, I don't know. It's interesting when we find these jokes. Obviously, there are a lot of like dad jokes, but a lot of these, like, people are trying real hard, and we have to like practice beforehand. We don't practice a lot of things beforehand, so you
don't practice basically anything.
You're right. Yeah, we don't even know what each other are talking about until we come on the show.
Right? What the fuck is practice for?
We're like, damn. I hope we don't contradict each other. That'll be interesting.
I love. It's super funny. Oftentimes before a show, we'll text each other and be like, which way did you take this? Like, what are we even doing?
Right, just in case. Yeah, we typically record more than one episode at a time, so we're recording another one later. And I was like, I texted Emily like 1 a.m. I was like, so I've been trying to study for an hour since I've been off work, and I've got an hour before we record tomorrow. What should I be looking up? Dependingly. All right, where?
That's funny.
My computer. That's so weird. Okay. It says, what do you call a group of people called to testify at the Salem witch trials?
What?
Witchnesses. I thought that was clever. Witchnesses.
Did you read, what book was it? It was a book about the Salem witch trials. It was required reading in high school. I had to read it twice because I took an advanced AP English course in my, like, for all of the time, and so I read it in sophomore year, and then I took a humanities in senior year, and they made us read it again. What is it fucking called? Damn it.
I have no idea. I just know that I remember there was in middle school and elementary school, like, dude, this is where my witchcraft practice started. Is I'd be like left alone. I'd be left alone at home without my family, and I'd be like sneaking into the other room, the little library room, so that I can open up the encyclopedia, so that I can Google. You know what I mean? So I can look up.
So you did 90s Google?
Yeah, so I could look up the Salem witch trials. Like, for some reason, I was so young. I was like 7 years old, and I was like, I have to know about this. And I'm like looking up herbalism and all this stuff. And then I read fictional books. There's this book called Gallows Hill. That shit's crazy. Anyway, so I have no idea what you're talking about, but
you know what else? It's Hocus Pocus is about the Salem witch trials, and I think that was the first time I was really exposed to it, like the movie Hocus Pocus.
Interesting.
And it like talks about, that was like during the witch trials in that period of time in Salem, and like I remember even the first time we actually learned about them in school, because again we're West Coast kids, so like we learned about like mining in the gold rush.
Right. Yeah,
like we're not the East Coast kids. Like I have a friend from Connecticut, and she learned about the witch trials and all that stuff. And I was like, you learned about that in school? Like, I don't think I learned about it in school until way later on. But then, of course, we learned about gold mining and the expansion of the West. And
right, yeah, Manifest Destiny and stuff.
Yeah, totally.
And the Donner Party, meanwhile. Shout out to Tahoe.
That was more of that was pioneers, too. Lewis and Clark and
I'm related to him.
Are you?
William Clark? Yeah.
Oh, well, that explains your last name, I guess.
Yes, ma'am. So
my maiden name is Anderson. I could be related to fucking everyone. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the first time I remember learning about it, I remember being like, yeah, those people definitely shouldn't have died. But it wasn't like super impactful. It was more just like energetically, I was like, wow, okay, like I feel that signature of that time of being persecuted, but I couldn't quite place it because I was like, a teenager. It was kind of like, what?
Yeah, okay. I just had the opposite reaction. I was so like I was so convinced that was part of my life. And are you an Outlander fan? Have you watched Outlander?
So I haven't, because I'm not ready to commit to the entire series of books. And if I start watching it immediately, I'm going to be like, I will read the things. And I'm not ready to do 7 books or 12 books or whatever the fuck it is. It's a lot of books.
It is, yeah. I should start reading the book. I just know that I am a huge, huge fan. Actually, the guy who plays Jamie just followed me back on Instagram. I'm like pretty stoked. I was like, me? What does he want to do with me? All right, welcome to the team.
Well, that's like, hello, Sir Jamie person. What's his name?
Jamie Fraser.
Okay.
I am obsessed, like, you know me, I'm obsessed with anything historical fiction, like especially like Scottish, English, British, like any of those things, because that was probably my last past life, or my most important past life to me now. However, in the show, there is an episode I just watched, because it takes place in 17 something, and it has to do with the witch trial, the Scottish witch trials. And by the way, you guys, Scotland had like an enormous amount of like play on how the witch trials start coming about in Europe. But there's a character named Galis Duncan in the show, and that was actually one of the women burned as a healer in the actual Scottish witch trials at North Berwick, I believe. And dude, ever since I've been doing this research, I've had her name stuck in my head to the point where I couldn't sleep last night, and I had her name repeated, and I fucking received a message from her to some extent. Like, I remember waking up so that I could write this shit down, and it said, continue your spiritual psychic practices, for you will outwarm my numbers. The fuck does outwarm mean? I don't know.
I don't know.
I was really excited to tell you that.
I was like, I don't touch, I guess.
To outwarm my numbers. I'm thinking like to like progress and to be louder than she was able to be.
I don't know. That's really interesting though.
Super weird. Anyway, but yeah, so there's that. But they talked about the witch trials as well, and I found it interesting, like how they tried witches. Have you looked into that?
There was a lot of different things. Let me pull up my notes. There was a lot of ways they did some shit.
I know we're kind of all over the place already. Sorry, guys.
Oh no, this is what they're here for. They love it organized chaos.
That's what we're here for. I want to dedicate this episode just to those people that were passed.
I like how you started doing that. Like you dedicate the episode at the beginning of it, and it makes me pretty happy. But because I'm like, oh, what can I dedicate it to? And I'm like, on our next episode, I want to come up with something absolutely ridiculous to dedicate it to. So just get ready.
Okay, that's right. I dedicate it to Bombay kitties. It's just 80,000 people. That's, dude, I was reading about, because 80% of those people were women for one reason or another, women that I don't know, for one reason or another, they were dictated to have been or accused to be a witch, that there's a place in Germany where at one point, so Germany had the highest rate of witch trials and witch
I was
murders.
reading about that.
Yeah, it was 368, I believe, or 386. And there were 2 villages where all the women were killed except for one woman. One woman was left in 2 villages, and they killed the rest of them off for being witches.
Could you imagine that one woman is the witch, and she's just like, fuck you.
She's like, that was so close. That was like, so close.
Man, that hex worked wonders.
Right? I'm going to marry all y'all. Get live.
Get ready. We are seeding Germany with witches.
That's funny. Like, I'm the only one. These ovaries are ready. Oh my God. But
you didn't
seriously,
want me before, but now.
now I got my pick of the litter.
And that's how the stereotypical witches have warts was born.
Yeah, that whole thing. Like, even at work, people make fun of me. I like sweep, and they're like, "Get your ride out of here." Like, shouldn't you be riding somewhere else? I'm like, shut up, you guys.
I'm like, what? Do I smell like a witch?
I have a Subaru. Okay. Leave me alone.
What you really need to do is get a big sticker of just like a broom to put along the back of your CV.
Oh, just dude, that's awesome. I had a girlfriend, actually today's Brittany's birthday. Shout out to Brittany. Her ex-boyfriend at the time wrote me a letter like, fuck off, you know-it-all liberal witchy bitch. I was like, you don't know me at all. Damn, I'm not. I mean, I'm a witch, yeah, but that's like it. Anyway, he was making a joke like, yeah, fuck you and the broomstick you wrote in on. That's what he said.
You're like, oh, my broomstick's so cute. Thank you.
I know, thank you. It's brand new. Anyway, yeah.
Like, I just crafted it in the last full moon using the blood of a goat. I'm just kidding.
Right.
Like, fuck with him.
I could take that real weird. Be like, your mom and I.
Your mom and I.
Oh my gosh.
Awesome.
So, where do you want to start?
Well, yeah, let's go back because we were talking about how exactly they tried them.
Oh yeah, dude, insane. So, what did you get?
Well, there was the float test, which is just, it's like the worst double entendre of all the double entendres that have ever occurred.
So,
it's so fucking bad.
That shit's insane. Where they would tie one finger on one hand to the opposite toe on the opposite foot, and then they'd throw these women into the river, and if they floated, they were witches and they were killed. But if they sunk, they were not witches and they just had to catch them before they drowned.
If they did, which is not often, because people float. That's what people
imagine. That's
like
how
that's how they would test dogs too. I found that like when they were trying to do, that's how they would test dogs. They would also bind their legs and throw them in. It's like,
oh shit, that's like, no wonder, like when we did that episode on Wicca, like Gerald Gardner and stuff, how they drove the earth healing practices underground.
Yeah.
And I think I could see why. What I found interesting is that they said that, so obviously there's like up to 80,000 people that were murdered or they were put to death through this, but if you refused to admit to being a witch, they would kill you, but if you admitted, they would only torture you.
Right. It's like, cool.
No wonder they fucking admitted to it. Right. I mean,
like,
how would you not?
And half of the time you died in torture anyway, so it still wasn't taking a big, like, oh, cool, I'll just get all my fingernails ripped off. Was not like a way out. It was like, cool, who knows what their torture is going to consist of. Also, a lot of times these were women, and that torture was really bad in other ways as well, which I was reading a lot about that. one of the headlines that I saw, which was pretty powerful, it was, what is it? I can find it. It's right here. About this, because I found this fantastic article on QZ.com, and it's really fucking cool because it's talking not just about the how centralized it was in Germany for a while, but also about all the different religious beliefs that played into this across all the different religions in Europe, which I thought was really cool.
Okay.
But one of the big headlines was neither holy nor Roman nor an empire. And it just like spoke to me so deep. It's like that was the act of this Holy Roman Empire, which it was none of those things at the time, but it was them trying to like hold this last foothold in Europe by like persecuting all of these people and trying to make people fear so much that they could come and become this big empire again of Holy Romanness. Like, fuck. Isn't that weird though?
Wow. Yeah, I got into this kind of conversation with my dad, and I referred to Catholicism as being a part of Christianity, and he was like, absolutely not. The Catholics are not Christian. And I was like, oh, wow. I was like, I mean, I guess technically, but in my head being like, I'm a pagan, so I just assumed that it's all kind of under the same umbrella or some shit. But anyway, so that was interesting. But
right.
King James.
Oh yeah. So I was like, I went back and I was like, all right, how did this fucking start? Because like that's always where I want to know where things come from. I'm like, everything has an origin story. So like, how the hell did this become a thing? Because it caught a spark and then just blew the fuck up all over
300 years.
Yeah, which is just crazy to me. And again, like the werewolf trials, which we've talked about before, that happened in France, it was a very similar situation where it like caught a spark and all of a sudden just like went out of control. And so for me, I was like, how did this start? And I was looking it up, and again in the same QZ article, which was super duper cool. It's called Why Europe Was Overrun by Witch Hunts in Early Modern History, which I thought was really fascinating. And it it says before the
early modern history. I love that.
Right?
Isn't that crazy?
Right? I was like,
wow, it is. I know, we're both like, I guess that is what it is.
It makes me think of like the furniture from the 60s where people are like, it's like the modern
postmodern.
Like, yeah, postmodern.
Oh my god, my stepmom is obsessed with that shit. Like everything she owns is like, because they lived in Palm Springs, so they had this like postmodern architecture like exhibit shit. Anyway.
You know, I really like Palm Springs. I've only ever been there once. I went there 2 years ago for a movie premiere, and it was I really dug it. The energy's really fun for some reason. It's like not quite LA, but definitely like very, I don't know. The energy was really
definitely Southern California.
Yeah, it was cool. I dug it though.
That's good. But anyway, I grew up going down there every year and then my dad living there. I'm like, I am not a fan of the desert. Thanks though.
I think I like the oasis feel. I think that's what it is. Because it's there's brown and desert everywhere, but then you get there and it's like this oasis feel, and there's a tram that you can get up to the top of the thing and overlook everything.
Yeah, the San Jacinto Mountains.
Yeah. I don't know. There's something about it. I was like, that's cool. Pretty fun.
But yeah, anyway, postmodern.
Postmodern, but this is early modern. So, but before the 1400s, basically it was saying that like generally Europeans all believed in different types of magic. It wasn't like out of the norm to think about magic things. Like Sicilians had gaggles of alluring women with the hands and feet of animals. That was like a big thing in Sicily that they believed would like come out of different places. Norwegians thought that the world was shared with earth trolls, and there was no actual concrete, like what they called it was a pan-European agreement. Like there was no common understanding of what a witch was. So when this actually broke out into these witch trials, many cultures lacked the concept entirely. It was something brought by travelers to them because they had no concept of what witchcraft was at all, because everything was just so magical. But when this started and all of the different religious strife that was happening, basically it was like 4 or 5 different Christian style churches, like the Protestants and Luciferianism, and then Lutheranism. What is it? Lutheranism? I don't know. I'm sorry if I fucked
Lutheranism,
that up.
I think, yeah.
Thank you. Plus the Catholics basically all essentially kind of got the same idea that, hey, we need to send these people kind of underground and take over and blanket their belief systems at the core in order to get people to believe what we want them to believe, which is a really horrible way of saying it. And I know, and I'm not trying to insult anyone's religion. This is just what historically was happening at the time and they have record of. So they started almost relying on mob violence to stir up the concept of the witch. Other than that, people didn't really realize, like, have a concept of what a witch was. So until it was used as a way to hurt others and control people, a witch wasn't really a term that people were even connected with. So then when this started happening because of all of the different religious strife, it was horrible. And mostly what they'd started to do is anyone who was a witch deemed by, certain people would start going around and being like, hey, they murder children. They use the fat of babies to make candles. They do all this stuff. And it was usually playing upon those fears that people already had about the death of their kids and that sort of stuff to like fuck up everybody.
Well, that immediately ties to the Malleus Maleficarum, so the witch's hammer, the book that that started basically this. It was the exhibit upon which the witch trials were built upon. So they're saying the women or the witches worked with the devil. They had the mark of Satan. The mark of Satan, they had a familiar, and they had all these different characteristics. And because when these women were accused of witchcraft, that then took away their their human rights. So that's why they were able to torture them, because they considered them not human anymore. And I think
it's such a sad thing to think about how much it's, hey, we're going to stoke the fears of the masses. This article compared it a lot to what's going on in our current political climate. As far as people getting pit against each other and fears on both sides being massively blown up and all of that. And they're like, hey, it was really similar during the time of this beginning of the witch hunts and the beginning of the witch trials. It was, hey, people are afraid of things. How can we amp those up? How can we turn everybody against each other, but try to give them a common enemy that they can then attack? And then eventually they're gonna be like, but what's gonna save us? And that's when the different
Holy Roman Empire. Well, dude, they made it to where they were going door to door. They stopped relying upon accusations of people saying oh, this person's a witch, or oh, they did this, whatever, and they just started going door to door and asking people to rat out their neighbors. And actually, I've heard that they did that in Russia as well, or they did it in Nazi Germany as well, where they would go door to door and they would ask them to rat on each other's neighbors and stuff. And so they're pitting each other against us. And you guys, I guess this is something we talk about all the time. Even if we don't agree with one another, you guys, we need to be aware of the things that we're told, to dehumanize someone because they believe in something. That's a different topic, but we are susceptible to it as a species.
Right. And it's crazy because this period of time, if we think about it, right now, everything feels so polarized and stuff. But the witch trial, the big witch trial activity, like Christy said, is 300 years of that much fear among people. Some even estimates, there's a year in here, it's 1300 to 1850. That is so much time. That is so much time. That's over 500 years of witch trial activity. And so just being aware of that too, of the power that fear can have, and knowing that you don't want that to have that fear over you. So always trying to figure out the source of where your fear is coming from is really important.
Dude, so there's so many different places that had these witch trials as well. Emily and I both have lists of them. Germany had the most. I think it said 300. Oh yeah, we talked about that. 386 people were murdered over the course of
Actually, I found an even higher statistic.
What?
From 1300 to 1850 in Germany, which held 42% of the trials that ended in death specifically, it was 6,800 people.
That's, what is it? I even have, dude, this is one thing, it's interesting finding all, because we go through so many different places. So I have a note written here that 26,000 deaths were in Germany and that 4 were in Ireland. And I think that was over the course of, I know the Irish are nah. We know what's going on.
Walking around every day, lass. I don't know what you're talking about.
It's so funny. They're like, but the Fae. No,
right?
You leave us alone.
Go in and out of the other world. If we killed them, that would be a big problem.
That was cute. That was great.
Sorry for any Irish people I just insulted the shit out of, but that was fun.
I think 386 was the number killed in one day. That's what it was. Yeah, which is...
That is so many people in one day.
The streets are running with blood, and they were talking about, so in the United States, the witches were hung, the 20 witches were hung as opposed to burned. However, in Europe, a lot of them were burned, and that they said that the smell of burning human was seeping into everyone's hair, seeping into their clothes, seeping into the houses,
I just got a visceral body reaction from that. like that's definitely a past life thing for me of smelling
Oh, wow.
It's like, and I have a horrible sense of smell now, so like the fact that I got the visceralness of that was horrendous.
That's to seep in, like, so this whole thing, like the way that they were accusing women, or the way that they were accusing people, like the stuff that I have this whole list of things about how and why they were accused.
Oh, it was for fucking everything. Like there was so many reasons why people would get accused that it was just it got to the point of like absurdity. Like if you were cleaning at a certain time of day, or if you used a certain thing to clean, that there was records of that one that was coming up of like, oh, were they caught picking berries in this particular berry patch? Well, that was like a saying, like,
was it a full moon?
Totally. Like, do you have a cat? Were you unable to have children? If you were unable to have children, you were basically fucked. Like if you were like a woman who couldn't have children in these places, like I was reading about that was like a big thing. People were like, oh, she couldn't have children because she would eat them, like that, like craziness. Yeah, some of the countries, and they all did it differently, which I also find interesting because we tend to blanket like, oh, it was the witch trials of Europe. Every single country did it totally different from one another. Like they were all like, yeah, there was like overarching themes and like undercurrents of like different ways that it was done and that sort of thing, but they were all done like really differently. My breakdown was like, it was done in Denmark, England, Finland, France, the Holy Roman Empire, Hungary, Iceland, which it blew my mind a little bit, Italy, Latvia and Estonia, the Northern Netherlands, Norway, Poland, Portugal, early modern Scotland, Sicily, Spain, the South and Southern Netherlands, and Sweden. And that's just on like one list of all the places that did these crazy witch hunts, which is just crazy to me. Like there's so many places, like it spans so much area, right?
And to what avail? Like I found what I really wanted to figure out or have something to bring to the show today was like, why were these women or why were these people accused of witchcraft, and like how does that relate to spirituality and like actual witch, or what we determine as actual witchcraft, or the healers or anything like that? Like what was it that caused that against, like, this action against women, that these people called it a Holocaust against women, because obviously, I mean, 80%, it wasn't the entirety of the people, but they said that 80%. I have something interesting here I wanted to read. This is from the faculty edu, so it's like some academic website, but it says the medieval conception of women, oh my gosh, I can't see anything. The medieval conception of women shares much with the corresponding medieval conception of the Jews. In both cases, a perennial attribution of secret, bountiful, malicious power in the enduring grotesque fears that would generate the respect of putative abilities to control men and therefore coerce, but others would end male-dominated Christian society. Whatever the social psychological determination operated in this abiding obsession, there can be no denying the consequence reality of such an anxiety of medieval Christendom. Linked to the theological traditions of Eve and Lilith, women were perceived as embodiments of inexhaustible negativity, though not quite quasi-liberal incarnations of the devil, as were Jews. Women are neither. Their ontological first cousins who, like the Jews, emerged from the left and sinister side of being. Yeah. So, sorry, I can't read. Great.
No, I'm very happy. Where's that from? So we could.
This is from faculty.umb.edu.
Cool. That's awesome. Because like I feel like that makes a lot of sense. Again, that othering concept. The othering and like right. Women were also starting to gain more like power basically at the time, and like again, Holy Roman Empire was like, fuck no women power women, no. That's not how this works.
They were determined to be close to the Jews, like this comparativeness. Trier, Germany, it says, was actually the biggest mass execution. That's where the 368 people. But Johann von Schoenberg, the Archbishop, ordered purging of the Protestants, the Jews, and the witches out of Trier, Germany. Or like, I had no idea there would be like this comparative.
Well, yeah, because the Holy Roman Empire at the time was basically Germany and Italy and Austria, like all of that was all the Holy Roman Empire. And it stretched over everything. And it's interesting because when you read about the witch trials throughout all the different areas, a lot of times it wasn't just witches it was anyone with different beliefs separate from ours we lumped into the category of witches,
Right.
like anything. And that's kind of what led to like the witch cult hypothesis that we talked about in our Wicca episode.
Love
Is
it.
like, hey, all of these pagan religions then had to go kind of underground and people had to like carry them on. I was even, most of the time when you read through like different things, oftentimes in a country, specifically this was with like the Latvia and Estonia and the Iceland trials, it was Baltic, so German elite clergy would come and stir up the hysteria, like basically come and be like, we are now persecuting witches. We have come to this town, so we must do this now. And everyone was like, what are witches? And then they would tell them about it and they were like, oh my gosh, we got to find them. They're here. Let's figure it out.
The devil, so, they work with the devil. Like, right? And then the idea of like just how giant of an effect that had, and then like leading to the Salem witch trials, like that level of fanaticism is what caused, like there's this theory that there was an outbreak of ergot in the Salem witch trials, or like the girls. So ergot is the thing, I guess, is the bacteria that leads to the creation of LSD. And so these women and these girls were eating this ergot by chance out of their grain, unbeknownst to themselves. So they were having hallucinations. They were having all these crazy fits. And they said that if you were having a fit and the witch accused were to touch you and you would stop having a fit, that would mean that witch needed to be burned. Can you imagine? They're 9-year-old children, 9-year-old girls that are saying, touch me, and then they're like, oh, we're fine now. It must be her.
Yeah. And they would turn on, like with the Salem witch trial specifically, like they turned on each other very quickly too, because like they didn't fucking know what was going on. So then the like 5 or 6 girls or whatever that was accused, 11 maybe I think it was, they all like basically ended up condemning each other at the core of it. Like they didn't even need external evidence. They just kept turning on each other and saying more about the other ones. And I would turn back and say that to them, and they tried to do all these tests that ended up worse, like even worse than before. Like it's just so ridiculous. Like it just spiraled out of control so fast. Also, like it's important to note, like the amount of stuff that they knew about things like mental health, like schizophrenia, things like that was non-existent.
Tragic.
So even if, who knows, maybe they ate some poison mushrooms, or maybe they ate ergot, or whatever they did, like the nutrition was shit. So who fucking knows what they were ingesting, or who knows what was going on with them mentally, or any of those things. So like that on top of it too is just like, fuck, we're lucky to live now.
Well, that's a lot of what the role that religion played, was because we didn't have these sciences, we didn't have these understandings. So a lot of the time these healers were being accused of witchcraft because they had the knowledge base of they called them the cunning folk in Britain, which I just love that so much. The cunning folk, where those were the healers. And actually what's interesting is like in Germany and all these places, it wasn't just peasant people that were being accused of it. I mean, it was pastors' wives, and then them having to the pastor having to talk and accuse his wife as well, or like all these other like high-end nobility people, like a third of nobility in certain areas. So like it wasn't just this, like as you think of a peasant family, where in Salem it was like the two families. It was the Putnam and the Porters. The Putnam and the Porter family. And so they were like family feuds. And so that's part of the reason that they were like, no, it's that family. No, it's that family. And then there's this like whole chaos.
Right. That comes from there. But yeah, no, all over in Europe, this was happening at the same time as the Spanish Inquisition also, which is important to note. So oftentimes I was reading about this too, is that it was easier for them to try someone for witchcraft than it was to try them for heresy. So sometimes if they felt like someone was a heretic or speaking out against the church in any way, they were like, oh, look at this witch, they did XYZ, they were awake past 10 p.m. at night, so death.
That's crazy, dude. The Inquisition. Right? I read this thing. It says the Dominican priests were the prosecutors of the heretics, primarily leading up to the Reformation, and that the priests were attacked in France, but the priests weren't hurt, but that their paperwork was. So that's why we have such little information, like actual factual paper definition of what happened and who it was that was murdered, because they chose to burn the paperwork as opposed to the priest. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense because not very many people could write anyway.
Oh my God. Yeah, you're right. Shit, I didn't even think about that part.
Yeah. So if you could write and you were able to record some of this stuff, of course they're going to be like, fuck no, you're dangerous in so many layers.
You're dangerous. Shit. Oh my gosh. What?
It's really sad because, and I know the way that the consciousness progression worked during this time. And I know now we're in a very different place as far as our collective consciousness goes. And I know at the time it was a going into the darkness, basically, right? Like the dark ages was like the dark ages of, you know, and then we started to come out of it, and now we've gotten to here, and right, we're progressing around again. But the level of things that were lost as far as like on an energetic psychic magic spectrum, like it just breaks my heart, because it's like, yeah, we've talked a lot about how these witches could be anybody, and they truly could have been, but also at the same time, this was the loss of so many ancient religions that were still practiced, of oral traditions that had been passed down for many generations.
Oh my God, you're
like
right.
whole women lines were just completely fucking wiped. Like they were just gone. And so unless
Well,
you
we're
had
dangerous. We were
right,
dangerous
well,
to the church. Women over 40, like primarily women over 40 were murdered. Like we are, by the time you're 40, like you don't give a fuck. You're not gonna be like, you're not gonna let some man tell you, you know? And so they were dangerous.
yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. And that was really old by then too.
Yeah, you're right. Good point.
You know, 40, if you were a woman over 40, you were like, whoa, what witchcraft did you do to live this long?
Wow.
Like,
She's
what
like, I've
spell
avoided
did
men my whole life.
right? She's like, I don't know, I ate vegetables. I think, what do you want from me?
What's a vegetable, witch? Oh my gosh.
Baby, don't just eat only meat.
Oh my gosh.
You
See,
won't get gout.
right. Oh my, yeah. Oh, your heart disease won't kick in. That's so sad.
But
King
like,
James.
oh yeah, go for King James.
Well, I'm just trying to remember like where a lot of this started. So King James was actually the king the first of England. So King James of Scotland, the king first of England, was the same guy, and he went to Denmark, and he discovered that in Denmark, the witch trials were already like balls deep in that, like it was already occurring. And he married the princess, or the Queen Anne of Denmark, and because she had so much trouble getting her ship from Scotland to Denmark, and that he also had trouble getting his ship from Denmark to Scotland, that they accused their housemaid of witchcraft, because the housemaid overheard him speak something kind of naughty to his wife, and he was like, the only way she would have known would be because she's witchcraft, and she was offended, and so she cursed our whole ship. And so that, like, in Scotland, like, that was the initiation for this whole thing, is that King James wrote this book called Demonology, which is a treatise on black magic. And so it was like the dominating force drawing everyone to this witch hunt, because he found it so interesting in Denmark that he was like, it like inspired this passion for him.
Watch this, like the poor maid be like, I'm deaf. What are you
She's like, I heard the other guy. I heard the other, it's
right?
like the fact that it could be any way that she could have heard this like naughty secret or something.
Oh my gosh. Wow, that's crazy. I didn't realize that was like the kickoff in England with him.
Yeah, totally. There's this guy also. So there was, what's his name? Matthew Hopkins. Oh my God, this guy referred to himself as the Witch Finder General in 1644, and that he was responsible for most of the killings during that time in England. The Witch Finder General. Did he have
a special hat? Does he get a special witch findy hat?
Yeah, it looks just like a witch hat. Queen Elizabeth made it. Oh my God, dude! Queen Elizabeth made it illegal to allow young girls to allow young children to testify against witches, and King Charles changed that, and they made it to where and that's how all of these, like the Pendleton witches, 9 women were accused, and they were hung because a 9-year-old girl accused them, and before that was illegal under the Witchcraft Act, but he made it legal. Isn't that crazy?
So much misogyny.
Just
so much like, look at my manpower over you. Like, fuck you all. That's so shit.
The Malleus Maleficarum. I remember being a kid, and that was one of the first things that I had learned. I remember like trying so hard to look it up in these little books, because it said that was like so much a part of what had caused this. And actually, the Malleus Maleficarum, the only book that outsold that in the history of humanity is the Bible.
Really?
Yeah. So, or at least maybe it was just during that time, but like during that time, the only book that outsold that book was the Bible.
Yeah, I mean, during that time, that makes sense.
And who can read once again and think about that?
Can you imagine? You're just chilling in your village. You're just kicking it. You're doing life stuff. And all of a sudden, in comes these guys with their weird, like, haircut, which just, they've shaved the top bald circle, but then they got the friars hair around. Yeah, like the friars, right? But you know what haircut I'm talking about. And they come in and they're like, hey, FYI, you're living next to demons. You might want to figure out who those are. Could you imagine how scared you would be? You'd be so fucking scared. And then you get accused of being one. You're like, am I a demon? I didn't think
Right.
I was.
Well,
Like,
Christianity had such
yeah,
like people were religious, like aptly.
yeah,
So I think it's interesting that there was living alongside each other was folklore and folk healing methods and nature-based healing methods, and then rampant Christian ideology. And so there
mhm.
was like this interrelationship between the two. And so because they didn't have science, they didn't have like God was their bigger thing, and then they knew what their interactions were with the earth, so they're agrarian and then Christian. And so like
Oh, yeah. I mean, totally. That's how their medicine worked too. It was like, hey, we actually have the doctor, or you have the, quote unquote witch, and the witch is actually going to heal you. The doctor's going to be like, maybe if we pour a bunch of acid on your slight cut, that'll help. Let's give it a shot. Like,
man, it's so like it's so sad. There was just so many, like, so 26,000 in just Germany alone for this 300-year thing. Like, we are truly so lucky to have been born right now. And once again, whether or not those people were witches, whether or not they were healers, or a midwife, if you were a midwife, if you knew how to help your woman or a woman deliver a baby, then you were fucked.
right. And like the very act, like it's such a, it, it's interesting to me, and I've always thought about this too when it comes to the witch trials. Hey, you burnt a person at a stake, and that's like how you decided you were going to solve the witch problem. Do you have any fucking idea how ritualistic and witchy that sounds? Like you're like accusing these, like it's the most ironic thing to me, because I'm like, okay, like hanging was like, that's been a thing forever. Ever, like
Yeah.
criminals got hung, like that was the thing forever. But with the witches specifically, and I know they did other things too with them, like I'm not saying that it was only, only witches ever got burned, or only this
Sure.
type, like that's not what I'm saying at all. But but like the fact that you're burning these people and you're accusing them of being like
You're
these evil people,
purifying them.
right?
Sounds familiar.
Like it makes me think of one of my favorite Disney movies that forever is obviously The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and like it's so sad because all of these people with these oral traditions, like the Romani people, that were gypsies
Yeah,
at the time,
absolutely.
or anyone else who were like travelers or just spoke orally, if their religion already hadn't been mostly wiped out, this fucking nailed in the coffin.
Well, and the Jews too. Like, it's crazy.
Mhm.
Like,
These two.
we should do an episode on Judaism. That is so interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we absolutely should.
Those poor people, man. I think that where there's just so many different periods of time. And I mean, it's interesting thinking about what role in the human psyche this level of othering plays. So,
Mhm.
like, even today, we still do it, or like I think that that's part of what of our generation is doing is we're trying to overcome this idea of the other. But even that, they can like people refer to like Trump supporters as them, or as liberals, them. So like even people that do their best to like try and overcome these ideas, like nobody's against LGBTQ, but they're against something else. Like, I wonder what it is just in human. I think that we must be bored. We must just be crawling out of our skin because we have this
I think
tribalism.
I think innately it's rooted in fear.
Yeah, for sure.
You want to be comfortable with the things you're comfortable with, and oftentimes the way you've got comfortable with those things you don't remember. Like we're not
Hmm.
necessarily super always like either was given to us in childhood, or it's just about where we live, that's like we innately like inherit something or whatever it is. And even if you, as you're trying to explore those innate biases, no matter who it's towards or what it's towards, like obviously we saw a lot of that with the BLM protests and stuff this year, and all of those things, which is super powerful to try to overcome those things as well. But it's inherently like using fear to manipulate the population and the masses, and it's the same archetypal shit as that's what we're talking about during the witch trials. It's the same kind of thing. It's like, oh, how can we make all of these people more indebted to their religious views? And in the witch trials case, it was like, hey, there's 3 or 4 really big religions trying to fight for some power here. Let's make people as scared as possible so that they actually have to pick one of those, and they're no longer relying on themselves and nature around them. And so I think it's still like an inherent fear and control sort of situation that we're all kind of dealing with um, in the now also.
We need to remember that we have the numbers. I think that it's truly like incredible what we would be able to do if we came together as people. And that's like the big point of what they're trying to not do, is like to like look at all the small amount of people that own so much of the world's wealth, and like look at during, like, a lot of us are struggling to pay rent during this coronavirus pandemic, but Walmart and all these places have made billions of amounts of money in benefit for this.
I saw this incredible video, and I highly recommend you look it up. And it's like, I think it was called How Much is a Billion? Because when you're taught about what a billion is, you're taught like, oh, it goes millions and then billions and then trillions. But no one actually is like, no, this is how much a billion is. Like, because which is so strategic too, of like, you know, these very, very higher people coming like, oh, don't worry about what a billion is. It's just near a million. When really like $1 million is like, I don't know, earning some like, or 1 million seconds. He like broke it down to how many seconds it would be. So you could start to like understand, like 1 million seconds is like less than a year. 1 billion seconds is over 10 years. Like, it's fucking insane, the difference between 1 million and 1 billion. And we just don't know.
We let it happen. Because what else are we going to do?
Billionaires constantly.
Oh my God, you guys.
In the world right now. And it's
what's the solution?
Mm-hmm. Well, something, I mean, something, there is one. There is one. So like, even if we don't fully see the picture, there is a solution, and it's gonna happen. Like, we're in this new stage of our world, and like obviously all these old structures are crumbling. Like,
that's kind of all history though. There's always something's crumbling though. You know, not to say I'm not a believer. I do agree that we're in this transitional phase. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
It's just
it's really interesting.
Yeah, wow. I pulled a card for this episode.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to bring up for this?
Only that, like, if you have a feeling that you were a witch in a past life, or that your ancestry has some sort of thing to do with witches, chances are fucking good you were. So like, don't be like, oh, how many, you know. I feel like I've done a lot of readings for people, and they're like, yeah, I think I was a witch in a past life, and they're almost like afraid to say it.
Oh,
they're like,
that's where it starts, man.
I think, you know, I think I died in a past life because I was a witch, and I'm like, yeah, that was like huge. That was so common. Like, that wasn't something that is like, we think of as like this, oh, not that many people had that happen to them.
Right, like you're not special.
50,000 to 80,000 people had that happen in just this period of time. So like, yeah, chances are very good. Right. So just to allow yourself that freedom to know that, like, if you have that feeling, you're definitely right. Just follow your gut.
That made me feel better, actually, because that was something that I've had to battle with as well. The idea of like, you're not special, you know, like not everyone's a princess, not everyone's, you know, this. But you're right. I mean, and that's part of the agreement that we have coming into the planet right now. We have come in to, like, look at the surge in neo-paganism, look at the surge in New Age spirituality, the surge in astrology and psychicism and herbal healing and like all of these things. Like, we have returned.
It's so fun to have the safety to speak about these things.
I agree.
Because like, even 10 years ago, this wasn't what it is now. Mm-hmm. You know, like even 10 years ago, like if we did this podcast, we would have people looking down on us like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
for sure. Podcast about what exactly? We're
now like, everyone's like, oh my God, you know what the 111 thing is?
Now it's like people are starting to actually feel safe enough to communicate about these things that have happened to them in their lives, or these feelings that they've had, or these. And which is just, I love it so much. Like, I revel in it with such a deep passion. Not only is it validating on a very personal level, because I will say there is like personal satisfaction in it too, because I'm like, there's more of me. But like, also it's such a cool energy to feel. Just people being vulnerable and open about these things that science hasn't proven yet.
Well, and the idea of the indigo children, man, I'm so, like, I guess indigo adults now, indigo souls. Like,
I don't think it's...
I know, I'm like, I'm 30, leave me alone. I truly am a believer that, and that's so much of what drives what I do, and so much what drives, like, my passion with this podcast too, is that we are in this period of time where we've come in to help the transition. And I do have the other thought that history is always in a state of transition. It is, but I think that this is a little bit different, you know. And I think a lot of, like, we've been preparing for this moment, and so please do not get discouraged by all the details of living a life that is encouraging of this transition. We're all struggling, but we're all also fucking rocking it. and we are in the process of bringing back this consciousness. And
I highly recommend if you're interested in knowing like the way that the world like is progressing right now and like consciousness shift, which is kind of what we're talking about, check out the precession of the equinox. Any sort of research you do on that, like that'll help to validate kind of what we're saying and like give you more explanation. Listeners, not you, Christy, but like listeners do this. Christy and I have talked about it extensively.
I'm like, you mean Graham Hancock? Dude, if we can get Graham Hancock in the show, I would just cry. I would just cry.
The whole show is just me and him talking, and Christy's just silent.
Right, I'm like, Graham, say my name. Say my name, Graham. Oh my God, could you imagine? That'd be like you with Alex Gray. Or Allison Gray.
I don't know, dude. He's pretty fucking interesting. I mostly would be like, what does the inside of your brain look like?
He's like, I drew it. Here you go.
Tell me, right? Like that.
He's like, have you even seen my art? Come on.
Right? I love his art and I love him so much, but he is some fucking out there of a person. Like
we'll get him on. You guys, thank you so much for all of the support that we've been receiving, and like thank you so much for being open to letting us talk about whatever we want. I know some people aren't necessarily fans of everything that we put out, but we
Shout out to all the people who got mad at us for doing our Flat Earth episode.
It's so interesting.
Like, guys, he was a guest. This was not our views.
He contacted us.
He reached out to us asking to come on, and we're super big proponents. We even talked about this when we had Jordan River on. Like, we're super big proponents of hearing as many different spiritual philosophies and concepts as humanly possible, because that's like what we're doing. We're here to learn. So like not having him on would have been not okay. Like we needed to have him on and like hear that side.
Interesting.
It was fucking fascinating.
I didn't know anything
about it. It was the best Flat Earth argument I'd ever heard. So I'm like, I was like, all right, like Flat Earth argument. All right, I'm good with this. Like,
he definitely believed it. And that's cool. It was just, it was good. You know, guys, we have to be able to have these conversations, and like, that's one thing. I'm not going to get all political, but the idea of not allowing different.
This episode was so non-political.
Well, because this will make people mad, because it's like they think, all right, you shouldn't be able to say certain things because it brings out the idea of creating violence. But it says, okay, to what extent does that stop? We need to be able to, I mean, there's wrong things that are wrong, and then there's facts, and you know, there's this correlation, but we need to be able to have conversations that are uncomfortable. And that's just what it comes down to. We have to be able to talk about this so that we can mesh it out people to people.
Yeah, I thought it was fun, but people got upset. We had some people that were like very uncomfortable that we were doing Flat Earth stuff, but that's okay. Glad you were uncomfortable.
Check out our other episodes. We've done a lot of stuff.
Being uncomfortable is literally like any sort of dense emotion that comes up in you is literally one of the best gifts you can possibly receive, because once you receive a dense emotion, once you find out the root of said emotion, you actually have something you actually can work on, like concretely, and understand more deeply about yourself. So if you're uncomfortable by anything that was said during that Flat Earth episode, figure out where that's coming from and what exactly fear that's related to, or whatever that is, because that's like a gift to be able to heal and release. So I
appreciate your thoughts on that. I know that you talk about that a lot in your other videos, on your TikTok, and on other episodes we've done. You bring that up a lot, and I think that's cool. That is a really healthy way of looking at emotions. Emotion. I pulled a card from my deviant. I pulled the Deviant Moon Tarot back again. I wanted to check in with it. So I got the Hermit card. All right. This looks like being imprisoned. Being imprisoned as a witch. Look at that. So what I'm hearing my guides say is that there is this duality between being hermitized and being separated, and that now what we're doing is we're stepping out of our prison, and we've all been hermits, but now we're together. So there is this, like, we can choose to alienate ourselves, we can choose to isolate ourselves, and we can choose to find the areas of our lives that do isolate us. And then we can also choose to open up, stand up straight, rest our shoulders down, speak our truth, and not allow ourselves to be curdled into this little ball. And I see this as, I mean, you guys, anyone that's watching this, and I'll send a picture of this to our Instagram people as well if you're just listening. Can you imagine what it would be like to have been accused to be a witch and to have been forced to become isolated and to sit in prison, in a stone prison?
I wonder how many of the people who are accused of being a witch was like, fuck, they caught me.
I would love, I don't know, let's tune into that shit.
You know what I mean, though?
Yes, like, I do.
I would be very intrigued how many people were like, oh my God, they caught me, it's terrifying. And some of them were like, yeah, I knew this was going to go down this way. Let's do it. Just just try me as a witch.
Like, that's what, well, watching Outlander, watching that freaking episode, it's crazy because in the show, not to spoil, so she comes back from the future and she ends up in 1776 or whatever, and then there's another woman who befriends her because she knows that something's up. She's like, I don't know who you are, and they come to find out the main character's from 1945 and the other girl's from 1968, and she pulls down her shirt and she says, this is the mark of the devil, and it's a smallpox vaccine, and the woman's like, oh my god, she's from the fucking future too. Oh my god. They're like coming back to change the Jacobite revolution. Like, it's just, I'm just so enthralled with it.
That shit like left some marks though, like there.
Yeah, very specific. Her husband's like, I've seen, honey, well, you promised not to lie to me. I've seen that mark on your arm as well. She's like, I gotta tell him I'm from 1945. It's crazy. I'm like, I just love that shit so much.
That's so funny. Okay, well, I know I'm just gonna want to read the books, but I should watch the show.
At least just watch it. You don't have to take it too seriously, but at least it's something to like relax with, you know?
Yeah, totally. I'm reading this amazing book right now, and I can't get it out of my brain, which is one of really fun. So
what's it called?
It's the second book in the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. And
God, you read books fast.
Yeah.
Like, every time it's like a different book. Yeah.
I read books very fast.
Cool.
And it's so fucking good. It's so good. I'm such a second book person. Like, if the second book isn't better than the first book, I usually like lose interest in the series. But second books can be so good. They can be so good.
Interesting. Now you're already invested, and now there's like you're not just learning the characters, you're not just learning the plot. You're like, oh my god, what if this happens? What if this happens?
Yeah, and it's one of the best written books I've ever read in my entire life.
That's awesome. So, great.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's super fun. But another it just reminded me of that. Anyway.
You guys. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you guys. We've gotten a lot of feedback on our YouTube channel. It was super fun. So we're glad you can see our faces. For those of you who are listening with just the audio, you can check us out on YouTube and find us, and you will get to see what we look like when we speak, which could be weird, I guess.
Look us up and then follow and subscribe to our channel so that we're able to customize it to where you guys can find us much easier. We still have to build up. We've got quite a few fans on Instagram, and we've really blown up with our listens through audio versions. Yeah. But please find us on YouTube so that we can continue to build.
Yeah, absolutely. We really appreciate you all. Thanks for making this so successful and fun. It's just great. We love it. You can, of course, follow us on Instagram at Perceptionists Anonymous. You can like us on Facebook, Perceptionists Anonymous. Please leave us a review on anything you're listening to us on. We appreciate that a lot. Yeah, and if you want to email us, let us know anything we got totally wrong or anything you'd like us to tell in the future. Right. Please send us an email. We'd love to hear that. It's perceptionistanonymous@gmail.com. As if you didn't know it was .com. I said that like that was a surprise.
.edu or .witch.
.witch, yes.
Love it. I'm gonna claim that shit. I got $20 I can buy that shit with. I'm gonna claim that title. Anyway.
Google.witch.
That's funny. Aw, cool, you guys.
All right, well, thank you all so much.
Your turn.
And as always, remember, you are magical as fuck.
Woo!